If you close your eyes and listen, truly listen, it does not sound like chaos. To the untrained ear, the sound of 1,000 dogs barking at once might seem like a deafening roar, a frightening wall of noise. But to Elena, standing in the center of the dust and the movement, it sounded like a symphony. It was the sound of life where there should have been silence. It was the sound of hearts beating that the world had decided should stop. Looking at her now, surrounded by a sea of fur and wagging tails, it is impossible to imagine that this kingdom of second chances began with a single, fragile heartbeat. Elena does not see numbers when she looks at them. She does not see a statistic of 1,000. She sees 1,000 individual stories of survival. She sees the heavy price she paid to be here, standing in the mud, richer than any billionaire, yet possessing nothing but the clothes on her back. But to understand the miracle of the present, we must return to the silence of the past. We must go back to the days before the barking, before the mud, and before the sacrifice. Back to a time when Elena was just like you or me, living a life that was safe, predictable, and entirely empty. 20 years ago, Elena's life was defined by clean lines and quiet rooms. She worked in a high-rise office in the city, surrounded by glass and concrete. Her concerns were the concerns of the modern world: deadlines, mortgages, and the pursuit of comfort. She was successful by every metric standard, yet she often found herself staring out of her office window, watching the gray city below, feeling a peculiar hollowness in her chest. It happened on a Tuesday, a day indistinguishable from any other. While driving home along a winding country road, she saw a shape on the shoulder. It was a heap of matted fur, motionless in the rain. Most drivers sped past, their eyes fixed on the road ahead, but Elena stopped. That split-second decision, the simple act of pulling the handbrake, was the moment her old life ended, though she did not know it yet. The dog was barely alive. He was old, broken, and terrified. When she lifted him, he did not growl. He let out a sigh of absolute surrender. She named him Lucky. In nursing Lucky back to health, in cleaning his wounds and feeding him by hand, the hollowness in Elena's chest began to fill. She realized that saving him had nothing to do with being a hero. It was about reclaiming her own humanity. One dog became two. Two became five. Once Elena's eyes had been opened to the suffering on the streets, she could no longer close them. It was as if a veil had been lifted. Every alleyway, every abandoned construction site, every roadside ditch seemed to reveal a pair of pleading eyes. She began to bring them home. Her pristine apartment became a triage center. The smell of expensive perfume was replaced by the scent of antiseptic and wet fur. Her friends began to worry. They whispered that she was losing her mind, that she was throwing away her potential. They told her she could not save them all, that it was a drop in the ocean. Elena would simply smile, tired but determined, and say, "To the world, this is just one dog, but to this dog, I am the world." The obsession had taken root. The call to serve was louder than the call of comfort. The breaking point was inevitable. You cannot house 30 dogs in a city apartment without consequences. The neighbors complained. The landlord issued an eviction notice. Elena stood at a crossroads. To the left lay her career, her reputation, and her safety. To the right lay the unknown. She looked at the faces of the animals she had promised to protect. There was no real choice. She sold everything: her car, her furniture, her jewelry, liquidated to buy a plot of land far from the city. She traded a life of air conditioning and fine dining for a life of mud, physical labor, and isolation. The land she bought was rugged, overgrown, and fenced only by thorns. With her own hands, she began to build. She hammered wood, dug trenches, and erected shelters. Her soft office hands became calloused and scarred. She was exhausted, yet for the first time in her life, she slept deeply without the aid of medication. The first winter was a brutal teacher. The cold was a physical weight that pressed down on the sanctuary. The number of dogs had risen to 100. Resources were scarce. Alina found herself skipping meals so the pack could eat. There were nights when the temperature dropped so low that she brought the weakest ones into her small cabin, sleeping in a pile of fur to share body heat. Fear is a powerful enemy. In the silence of those freezing nights, the voice of doubt would whisper to her, "You have made a mistake," it said. "You will fail them." She watched her bank account dwindle to double digits. She was alone, miles from civilization, responsible for 100 lives. The weight of it threatened to crush her. She cried, not for herself, but for the fear that she would not be enough for them. But animals have a wisdom that humans often lack. They sensed her despair. On her darkest morning, when she could barely summon the strength to arise, she felt a wet nose against her hand, then another and another. The pack did not ask for food that morning. They offered comfort. They surrounded her, a living blanket of warmth and empathy. They licked her tears and leaned their sturdy bodies against her frail one. In that moment, the dynamic shifted. She was not just their savior, they were hers. It was a mutual pact of survival. She realized that she did not need to carry the burden alone, because she was part of a pack now, and the pack looks after its own. This realization reignited the fire in her belly. She stood up, wiped her face, and went to work. Word of the woman in the mountains began to spread. At first, it was a trickle, a local farmer dropping off a bag of rice, a veterinarian offering discounted services. Then the internet caught wind of her mission. People saw the authenticity of her struggle. They saw a woman who had stripped away all vanity to serve a higher purpose. Donations began to arrive, not millions, but enough. With the support came expansion. 100 dogs became 300. 300 became 500. The sanctuary grew organically, like a forest. New enclosures were built, running water was installed, and a small clinic was established on site. The land that was once barren was now teeming with life. It was a chaotic, noisy, messy paradise. Managing 500 personalities requires more than just logistics. It requires an understanding of the invisible threads that bind living things. Alina learned the language of the pack. She knew which dogs were the peacekeepers, which were the clowns, and which carried traumas that required space. She moved among them not as a master, but as a matriarch, respected, not feared. She created a system where the healed dogs helped heal the broken ones. When a new, terrified arrival was brought in, she wouldn't approach it immediately. She would send in the ambassadors, dogs who had once been abused but now knew only love. They would show the newcomer that this place was different, that here hands were for petting, not for striking. There is always one story that haunts you. For Elena, it was a dog named Titan. He was a massive mastiff, found chained in a basement, starved to the brink of death. His eyes were void of hope. When he arrived, he could not stand. The vet suggested it might be kinder to let him sleep. But Elena saw a flicker, a tiny, stubborn spark of will deep within him. For 6 months, she carried him. She blended his food, massaged his atrophied muscles, and slept by his side. It was a battle of inches. There were days of regression, days of tears. But then, on a warm spring afternoon, Titan stood. He took 3 shaky steps and leaned his massive head against Elena's chest. It was a victory greater than any lottery win. Titan lived for 4 more years, the king of the sanctuary, a living testament to the impossible. But nature is indifferent to our victories. 7 years into her journey, the sky turned black. A storm of historic proportions swept through the valley. The rivers swelled, and the ground turned to liquid. The sanctuary, located in the basin, was in the direct path of the floodwaters. It was the middle of the night, the power cut out. The roar of the water competed with the panicked barking of 800 dogs. It was a nightmare in motion. Elena and a handful of volunteers worked in water up to their waists. They had to make impossible choices, moving the sick and the small to higher ground first. Gates were opened, fences cut. "Go up!" she screamed into the wind, guiding the pack up the hillside. She slipped, fell, and was dragged by the current, but she clawed her way back. She would not leave them. When the sun rose, the devastation was absolute. The structures were gone, the food storage was destroyed, but as Elena sat on the muddy hill, shivering and bruised, she began to count. She counted tails, she counted ears. Miraculously, they were there, wet, shaking, and covered in mud, but alive. The pack had stayed together. They had moved as one organism to the high ground. They had lost everything material, again, but they had not lost each other. The image of Elena and her dogs on that hill went viral. The world responded with a tidal wave of support. Strangers drove trucks of supplies from 3 countries away. Carpenters came to rebuild.
The flood did not end them. It cemented them. The sanctuary that rose from the mud was stronger, safer, and bigger than before. Today, the count stands at over 1,000. 1,000 hearts beating because one woman decided to stop driving and pull over. Elena is older now. Her walk is slower, her back aches, and her hair is the color of the winter snow. But her eyes are bright with a peace that most people spend their entire lives searching for and never finding. She owns nothing, yet she possesses everything. She has taught us that love is not a finite resource. It does not run out the more you give. In fact, it multiplies. When asked if she regrets the career, the money, or the easy life she left behind, she simply looks at the sea of wagging tails and smiles. "I didn't save them," she whispers to the wind. "They saved me."